Greetings once again from Pahasapa, the center of the universe, the place where the Lakota people, Native Americans, come to pray for the state of the world. Stan Gibilisco, at your service. Prime Elder of the Magnates of Malarkey, fearless leader of the Barons of Baloney, and Supreme Commander of the Sultans of Stupidity. You can get to this place by entering the Magnates of Malarkey as a phrase in your favorite search engine. I think it's the only hit you're going to get. Be sure to include the E in Malarkey. About me. Take you to my main website, sciencewriter.net. Research sites, the fourth link down. There's a lot of my favorite research sites. Weather and climate. That seems apropos today. It's the coldest day so far of the winter season here in Pahasapa. The high -10, the low -20. So I'm just hanging out at home making videos, generally making an idiot out of myself. Go to National Hurricane Center. That is the website of, you guessed it, the National Hurricane Center. I got a story I can tell you about that place sometime, but I'm not sure that I certainly am not going to do it now. In the search box, type Andrew. Andrew. A-N-D-R-E-W. Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew caused an estimated $26 billion worth of damage in the United States. Well, I remember that hurricane, 1992. August 24th, 1992. Here is a radar image of that hurricane as it made landfall right down by Turkey Point. That's the thing right there. I don't know if I can zoom in here to make this image any bigger, but I think it's big enough for you to see right there as it is now. Turkey Point is right there. I was located right about at Southwest 288th Street and 177th Avenue, right about there where you see this arrow right here. As this hurricane moved in, notice the closed eye wall, sustained winds going around counterclockwise like that, the most intense right up here around the Perrine Cutler Ridge areas where it made landfall right about here. Easterly winds gusting to over 170 miles an hour. This radar image was the last radar image taken, I believe, at the National Hurricane Center, which at that time was located in Coral Gables, Florida, right at that little plus sign, right there. Right there. The sustained winds were 138 miles an hour with gusts to a little over 160 miles an hour, and then their radar dome blew off the roof of that building. And that was the end of their radar. They had to switch to the Palm Beach radar to show us the image. But there is the closed eye wall, sustained winds estimated at something around 150 miles an hour, with gusts. Generally, the gusts in a hurricane are about 30 miles an hour, greater than the sustained wind. Not 30% greater, but about 30 miles an hour greater, usually. So we can suppose that these gusts were around 180 miles an hour. I believe they measured 177 at Turkey Point, something like that. But I was right there, and so I got to go right through the center as that thing passed right over my head. 45 minutes of northerly winds at probably 130 to 140 miles an hour sustained. Sounded like a freight train on the roof. About a 45-minute to an hour lull. And then the southerly winds came back, and they were much less intense than the original northerly winds were. But again, about 45 minutes worth of wind. So the whole storm was only a little over 2 hours long. The really intense part would begin at the edge of this eye wall, and it was really a dramatic thing. It sounded like a windstorm outside, but once that eye wall actually came overhead, and it was just about to as this picture was taken, once that eye wall came overhead, the house began to shake, and this was a reinforced concrete house built according to the 1926 hurricane standards, and it was shaking under the impact of the gusts during this part of the hurricane right here. Sounded like a freight train going over the roof. But the house, the main core of the house, survived all right. A couple of windows blew out. Sprayed the inside of the living room with water and leaves. But generally speaking, we survived it fine. It was a mess afterwards, as you can well imagine. Power completely gone. Utility grid completely obliterated. Conditions sort of like you might expect in a war zone. In fact, they compared it to the war zone in Vietnam in the late 1960s and early 70s. A mess. But anyway, that's the story, my story, of Hurricane Andrew. And I would like to conclude with a particular remark. I want to make a remark about hurricane winds. Occasionally you will hear people say during a blizzard, or a severe thunderstorm in the Midwest that hurricane force gusts are taking place. Now, a hurricane force wind, by definition, has to be at least 74 miles an hour or greater, and that has to be the sustained wind. The gusts usually about 30 miles an hour greater, so you can say that in general, winds have to gust over 100 miles an hour before you really have hurricane conditions. So when they say hurricane force wind gusts, and the wind is gusting to say 77 miles an hour or something, the sustained wind may only be about 47 miles an hour or thereabouts. That's just a gale. That is not a hurricane. By definition, a hurricane is a sustained wind of 74 miles an hour or greater. By that definition, this particular storm right here was a hurricane. And I remember it well. Were you there? Do you remember this storm? I sure remember this storm. They've got some other good pictures, too. There's another image of it making landfall. That really doesn't do very much justice to it, though. It makes it look bigger than it really was. It was only about 40 miles an hour, 40 miles in diameter. There's some of the damage. Believe me, photographs do a pretty good job of showing destruction, but they cannot begin to compare to the actual experience of seeing it before and after. Nor can a photograph like this or any video of any hurricane ever portray the magnitude and the depth and the resonances of the noise that it makes. There's no way to experience that noise that I know of other than to actually go through a storm and witness it for yourself. It's as if the very earth were engaged in some sort of a tantrum, which in a way I suppose one might say that it was. Stan Gibilisco, sciencewriter.net, also proprietor of the website called The Magnates of Malarkey. Signing off until next time. So long.